Welcome back to a family business podcast. Did I do well on that, PT?
Sounds good.
All right, good. So today's topic is the power of agent-to-agent relationships.
Ooh.
Very important, right?
Why is that important, Brad?
Well, that's what we're going to get into.
Do you want to make your life less stressful? I mean, my goodness.
It's true.
I know that we don't have all the power in the world, but a percentage of your transactions probably will run a little bit smoother if you focus on this topic.
And can get along with others. Well,
you can play in the sandbox.
Yeah, if you can play in the sandbox, that's exactly right. So how is collaboration an advantage during the transaction? Like a lot of people think, I really think newer agents especially, that, they try to prove their worth, right? And not in a bad way, but they want to make sure they're representing their clients. And I always make the argument that you've got a buyer that wants to buy and you have a seller that wants to sell. So kind of go into that, like how is it that collaboration can actually help get the deal closed?
Well,
or even get your client the house.
Exactly. Well, yes, at the end of the day, our responsibility is due to the client, right? But also our job is to make sure that their professional skill is being used at the end of the day. And part of that is communication and collaboration. And where you see most of these transactions go from good to bad is when there's failed communication, in my opinion. And now with these transactions becoming more complex, just because it's not a cash offer, no inspections,
Right.
Quick close date, right? Now we're going through inspections. We're having to work through those different complexities. The financing, we just listened to a podcast about the government being shut down and FHA loans potentially being delayed,
VA,
FEMA, all of it, right? So where do you keep yourself on track? And that's communication.
100%. And relationships too, right? And a big part of that goes into how you treat other agents. And yeah, you're exactly right. You have to represent your client. There's no question about it. But there's a flip side to that too, being reasonable, right? I mean, to try to come to a common ground. And I really think over the years, you get a reputation too.
Well, and I'm going to kind of turn that to a different direction, exactly what you're saying. I mean, agent-to-agent relationships matter and communication, all of that. But I also feel like as an agent, in order to have good agent-to-agent relationships, you also have to know your craft, right? And what I mean by that is, you need to be knowledgeable about the contract and the parts of the contract and the contingencies and how it works. You need to hone your skills and continue to do continuing education and stay up on, changes that are happening, because the worst situation and the when it comes to agent relationships, and it makes me think of transactions we've had where, somebody writes an offer. I mean, we all have this happen, right? Let's say, especially in the multiple offer situation, you get 10 offers, right? And you see the name on the contract and you go, ugh. And you're like, please don't let this be the best offer. Please don't let this be the best offer. And then it is. And then unfortunately, you have to have the conversation with your client of, hey, here's the deal. This is the best offer, in regards to all the terms and the price and all these things. The only thing that I just want to caution you is in our experience, when we've had other deals with a specific agent, we've had issues and they haven't made it to the closing table, or the closing's been delayed. And a lot of that falls back on the agent not understanding the contract and what they're supposed to be doing correctly. So, and at the end of the day, they're costing, so look at this, what that is for your client. You might be costing your client a deal because you're not staying up to date and on track with what you're supposed to be doing. So I think that's super important, because at the end of the day, the person, like you said, PT, we answer to is our client, whether it's our buyer or our seller. We have a duty to communicate to them. Same thing if you have a lender. I know people argue with this, but I disagree 100%. And I'll use my own personal property. When we sold my condo, we had multiple offers on it. One of the offers came from a lender that historically, any time, and remember, Brad's been doing this for how long, PT? 25 years.
Can't wait till it's 26. Change that.
in his 25 years, we have historically had numerous offers come in from this particular lender. And, back in the day when there wasn't multiple offers, you would have to take it. And I can't think of a single one that's closed with that lender. So when an offer comes in on my own property and it's multiple offers, do you think I want to take the one that has the lender that doesn't close the deal? Same thing with agents, right? So that's what I mean is you want to work with the agent that is going to get it to the closing table, because at the end of the day, you're responsible for your seller and them getting the most amount of money they can for their property on the best terms and with the least amount of stress.
Yes.
Just think for a second what you just said. A seller reviews an offer, and hopefully they have a good agent that helps them understand every single item that comes with that offer, right? You hold so much importance within an offer, it could potentially blow up a deal, right?
Yeah.
And it's, or give your buyer a disadvantage when you think that you have this amazing game plan. We're going to offer 30 grand over. We're not going to do inspections, but the other agent knows your history.
Yeah.
And that should weigh a ton on you, that you not only are representing this person, but your reputation also has a play within if your offer gets accepted.
100%.
And do you remember, and I know you, but do you remember, talk to your exact point, PT. We had one a few years ago. I remember the address of the house and I remember the agent. I remember the agent calling us because there was 2 offers. And she said to us, it's very close, we want highest and best or whatever. So our client went in with their highest and best. And the agent actually called you and said after the fact, your client is getting the property. Actually, it's about, I think it was $2,000 less than the other offer, but they trusted that Brad, and first of all, the offer was written correctly, had all the documents that were needed to, expedite executing it. And she said, you're the reason why we're taking their offer over the other offer, even though the other offer is slightly higher.
Yeah, you always want to be that person, not the other way around. And it's not about being drinking buddies with the other realtors. It's more about your reputation, as in knowing the contract, being reasonable, all of the rest of that. It never said that I'm never going to say, oh, well, you need to be best buddies with all the agents and you need to go out partying with. No, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is good business people are reasonable, right? There is a way to represent your client and not blow up a deal. It's at times you have to tell your own client that, hey, that's not a reasonable request, right? And unfortunately, a lot of newer agents and experienced agents just don't know how to tell their clients no. And that's what ends up costing the deal long term. And then unfortunately, if you never learn how to deal with that, then your reputation is that that's what you do.
Right. Yeah. It's the crazy thing, but you're under a microglass, of everything, every transaction. Like people remember transactions from how many years ago, right? And most likely the badder ones, but they also remember the smooth ones. Of course, it's always been smooth with this person. They know what they're doing. They know that they're going to get this to the finish line. I guess a good question to kind of dive deep into is collaboration. So yes, you don't need to go party and you don't need to do this, but something that we've started to actually really understand the meaning of collaboration since we joined Real was, the true meaning is that you are here to not only help your clients, but help other people succeed at the end of the day. And we are thriving off that. And what does that mean? It means you're supporting people, whether they're, and for me, at the end of the day, it comes down to communication. If someone needs to ask a question, be there for them. If they've got a realtor open, show up and support them. There's just so many small things that you could do other than just drinking and being best friends with, but actually being an asset to that person at the end of the day too.
Yeah, exactly. What comes to mind to me, PT, when you say that, and you're 100% correct, Real definitely has that vibe and that culture of collaboration, and I don't think any of us fully understood it to the extent we do now. But the thing that comes to mind when you say that to me is better together, right? And what I mean by that is just think about this. If we take responsibility as agents and as leaders in our community and real estate and whatnot to help guide newer agents or inexperienced agents in how to sell real estate and help buyers and sellers better, then we're helping all of our clients as well, right? Because if they understand the contract, they understand the process and what's acceptable and not acceptable and et cetera, then it's going to be better for them and their client, which then is better for whoever they write the offer on. And I think sometimes agents, we have a tendency, and I'll use myself as an example of this. When I was newer in the business, you guys don't know me personally other than the podcast, but I'm a very type A personality. I don't like to be wrong. I've worked on that over the years in my business. But I realized that, and we just talked about this the other night with PT and Brad, we had a little business retreat. And, the thing is as an agent, I think sometimes when maybe an experienced agent or someone that knows what they're talking about, that's the key. Do they know what they're talking about? Maybe tells you, hey, that's not correct, or this is the wrong way to do it, or this is the way you could have done it better. They're trying to help you. And there's no way to grow. You cannot grow unless you make mistakes and you learn from them. And I do think that is probably a downfall in our industry, because we don't want to admit that we're wrong, because then we think it makes us look weak or not as good of an agent. But at the end of the day, the way that you continue to excel, and I will give you credit for this, Brad, and I PT you have 100% do your business the same way. But I mean, you have no problem admitting when you're wrong. When you're wrong, you admit that you're wrong, you fix the issue, you learn from it, and you hold yourself accountable. And I think in our industry, a lot of times we don't. Yeah. And that's what causes bad really relationships.
You make a mistake. And
sorry, we just got back from France. Apparently, we bought a little something else. More so than what were those things? Macaroons?
Right. You make a mistake and you don't admit it, and you try to cover up that you really think it's a weakness when everybody makes mistakes. I mean, that's really not. So, like, going into that, say, when is it when a transaction's gone bad? I mean, that, it's almost at the end where you're like, oh shoot, we can't save it, where your reputation and relationship with the other agent actually saved it.
I think that especially, number one is taking emotion out of it. Okay. I think you're also Brad is very, very good at that. And that I think comes from just knowledge and wisdom in the years, right? You just don't get as excited about things anymore. And it's because you go through all these, I don't even know how many transactions, but like over 1,500 transactions, right? You've seen a lot of things, and I used to laugh before I was in the business with Brad, and I think I talked about this in the podcast. I was in my office at my previous job, and Brad would call me in the morning, and keep in mind, you were only what, eight, how many years in? 8 years at that point?
2007.
Okay, so 7 years in.
Because that would be 18 years ago, and I'd been in the business for, I'm trying to think.
Oh my gosh.
25.
So you would call me in the morning and, to talk about, what had happened in your showings, your stuff or whatever, and you'd be all upset about some deal. And I would just be like, it'll be fine. And then by the afternoon, you would call me and it had already worked itself out and everything was fine 9 out of 10 times. So I think that the longer you're in the business,
for sure,
you realize that,
yeah.
Right?
And I think age kind of does that too. It kind of mellows you out a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so for like newer agents, it's tough, right? I mean, you're working hard to get this first deal or first listing under your belt, or I think that's a great way to phrase it. Is, it's something new every single time, right? And so it's easy to get off track when your mind is new to the situation,
yeah.
Right? And that's where it goes back to collaboration. Who do you have to go to when something you might not? We always say this. If you don't know the answer, say, I have my mentor that I can get you an answer for this. Just let me ask them, and I'll get right back to you. So there's so many different ways to make sure that you're going through it correctly.
And again, people respect that more than just coming up with a nonsense answer. And you also don't learn anything, right? So that's so true, PT, is like, it's okay. And even as experienced agents, right? I mean, there's still time. I mean, I've been doing this for 18 years, and there are still times that, like, I'll call Brad, or I'll call Sarah, or I'll call Peter, or I'll call somebody else and just say, hey, can I just run through this with you? Because am I being too emotional about it? Am I not, thinking through it the right way? Like, I mean, that's okay.
Right. Yes. And one thing that Brad does that, I think is extremely powerful is there'll be times where he just says, let me think about it and I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
So like if you don't have an answer or you don't feel confident in the answer you're ready to provide, take that extra 5 minutes to, or even if it's like there's a situation going on in the transaction, it's very easy for us to just send that nasty email back that everybody talks about, right? Just take some time to collect yourself and make the educated move that you know that you need to make, but it's very hard to do that if the stakes are higher.
It is, and you never want to let the emotions get involved. It's very easy when you're in a transaction where you feel like your clients were wrong or you were wrong, that you want to immediately respond. The best thing you can do is just take a little time over it and then respond. I had one example of, and it may not have necessarily saved the deal, but it made everything a lot easier. We had one recently this last summer, spring, where the closing got delayed, that there were closing costs involved, and the other agent called, and we got a hold of the lender. They're like, no, I got to go back to underwriting, blah, blah, blah. So our client was buying a property that she had to get everything out. So she wanted to be sure that hers was going to close. So I called the other agent, Ray McDevitt, with Rule and Roll. Great agent. But I mean, this is about relationships.
Yeah.
And, when we got down to the closing table, it was never tense. It was, we're just going to get this thing worked out. And we were able to work it out where the client was able to get in a little bit early in the garage, and I'm not even so sure that she even had to do that. I can't remember exactly, but at the closing table, I remember talking this through, and he was kind of laughing that, hey, that's the way this real estate business is, and over the years, you just learn that it's all going to work itself out. You just have to calm down, and that's a relationship thing there where, if it would have been a newer agent, there might have been a lot more panic, or inexperienced agent, or even an experienced agent that's emotional.
Right.
It probably would not have ended the way that it did. And I was just very grateful that, that's once again, talking about agent to agent relationships, that's important.
Well, it also goes back to, too, it made me think about, you talk about this, is as an agent, always operating from a place of integrity and honesty. Because, people understand that what your word is, right? And those are also conversations with our clients, right? When we talk to our clients and they want us to communicate, because at the end of the day, we answer to our clients, we have to do what they say. But they want us to do something that we know is going to light a match on that transaction, right? We make sure that our client fully understands, hey, listen, I'm going to communicate this as if this is what you want me to communicate, but I need you to understand that in our experience, this is what the result's going to be. It's not the one you want, but, and so really having that so that the other agent on the other side of it knows as an agent that, hey, this person operates from a place of integrity and character and honesty. And so if this is where we're at, this is where we're at. Yeah. And hopefully we can work through it. And like you just said, remove the emotion. And I think too, going back to what I said earlier about, you look at that list of 10 offers and there's that one and you're like, ugh. On the flip side of that, if you also have to be mature enough that if there is an agent that maybe you had a personal issue with, or maybe you have to remember that you're operating from the place of professionalism as a realtor in a real estate transaction, and you're representing your client and they're representing their client, and you have to take the rest of that out of it. So I think that's super important as well. And if more of us did that, I think then a lot of transactions, there's times, and again, I'm going to use myself as an example. I remember in the earlier years when I was more emotional, we just talked about this, I'm type A. It's one of those things that I work through with how I respond to things. But I can remember, saying to Brad, well, that's not fair. I'm so irritated and, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, what, at the end of the day though, Andrew, you have to do what your client wants. That's what you have to do. You might be irritated with that agent. You might be frustrated with the way they're handling it, but they also have to do what their client wants.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to remember.
Well, and if you look at the top 10 agents in our MLS, every one of them, you could argue, is very good at relationship skills, not only with their clients, but with other agents, and being able to get along and work their way through issues that if you've reached that level, there's been plenty of times when you've had the opportunity to deal with issues that over time, you just learn to deal with them calmly.
Well, and this is a funny story that we just had, but it's just about knowing your other agents, right? And this particular situation, we wrote an offer and we got the pre-approval letter, and it was a later date, and I saw that when it came across, and I'm like, well, let's just attach this to the offer, and we'll communicate that we'll work on it. It was on the weekend, so sometimes they're available, sometimes they aren't. But he called me that night and he said, what is that pre-approval letter? He said, Andrea Sue would write me a whole new one if that's what I provided to her. And I'm like, you're right, 100%. So, but that's just, we know what's expected. And that's the correct way to proceed with it.
Well, and not only that, talking about agent to agent relationships. So those agents know that if you're going to present an offer to us, we're going to represent our client, and you need to make sure you have your ducks in a row. That's just what it is.
To that agent's credit, Kurt Johnson.
Boy, we're jacking the rule people today.
Yeah, well, it's a good company, right? But yeah, I mean, that's one of those where he runs his business where the transactions are easier with him, that he knows the end goal is that his clients want to sell the home, right? So he has to represent his client to get that pre-approval letter updated, as we do as well.
Right.
Income, credit, and assets must be verified, right? But in a way that's a little bit joking, but really, that's doing your job, right? And to understand that, going back to the relationship thing, is you laugh that you knew that the pre-approval letter didn't mean a whole lot, but it's past its date and all the rest of that.
Well, and guess what? The agent, and I guarantee you, Kurt's also been through in this business long enough that he's been through exactly what we've been through. The reason why we're sticklers about that, and inexperienced or newer agents, they're like, gosh, that Andrea, she's just being a pain in the butt. No, here's what happened. On some deal, we had multiple offers. We accepted an offer with a pre-approval letter that was not current to the date, or didn't have what it needed, or we didn't have the pre-approval. And then guess what happened 2 days later? They never provided it, couldn't get it updated, and they really didn't qualify for the loan. Well, now I've just turned away other buyers, and I've got a ticked off seller. So again, it goes back to, it's not personal. 100%. It's about representing your client.
And if there's one thing that you've really taught me, Andrea, is at times, I take that back. My mother used to always tell me this, as well as my elementary school teachers. You have to slow down sometimes, right? And make sure it is done correctly, not just rush through it. That I tend to, my personality is, let's just get it done, right? Whereas there are times, like with the pre-approval letter, with the details of the contract that are very important. Right?
Oh, wait, there's a washer and dryer in my bill of sale?
Exactly.
Nobody told me. Okay, yeah,
exactly.
Because, somebody didn't go through that with you.
Yep, 100%.
Well, and I'm like a full believer that like the correct solution isn't the first try around, right? 99% of the time, the best solution is to sit down, go through all of your options. Okay, here's this is what happens if you do this. This is what happens if you do this. And it goes back to, we have to do what our clients, want to do at the end of the day, which is 100% correct. But it's also our job to lay out all the options and all the solutions, and then yes, they make an educated decision.
Exactly.
Right, and it goes back to what you said before, PT, collaboration. We're better together. If you have a unique situation, you should be reaching out to your mentor, or people sometimes might be listening to going, oh, agency. You don't have to give them the address of the property. You don't have to give them the names of the client.
Exactly.
You can just have the conversation. In this scenario, X, Y, and Z, what would you do? Or have you experienced this? Or what are the risks involved in taking this situation or that situation? I remember an agent calling, who's actually on our team, calling one time, and this is something I'm sure people would never really think about. But she's an experienced agent, but it was one of those ones where it was messing with her brain. She's like, all right, I have an offer on a property. It was like a $150,000 offer. She goes, or property. She goes, one of the offers is cash, but they have inspections. Okay. The other offer is financing. It's also $2,500 more, and they don't have inspections. What would you do? I said, I'm sorry, I'm taking the financed offer.
Yeah.
Number one, it's more. And number two, the cash offer means nothing.
It's all cash in the end.
Yeah, right. Who cares?
And you should have done, you priced the home. You had the comps to price the home. Yeah. So you shouldn't have any issues with the financing.
Exactly.
But again, that's just, and going back to that, that's just making those phone calls to think through it. And that's about having those relationships. You have people you can rely on. And she needed to make sure she made the best decision for her client. Yeah. And that's what it all comes down to. And so, I think, and the other thing is that, it goes back to, and we haven't talked about this for a long time, but it goes back to when the law changes happened with the, buyer's agency agreements and the decoupling of commissions and all those things. there was a lot of agents that maybe weren't doing things the right way when all that was going on. And at the end of the day, there were agents that were calling other agents out, and as well they should be, because at the end of the day, our job in collaborating and growing and being great realtors is to help the general public buy and sell.
Yep.
And if we're not holding each other accountable to a higher standard, then who is it that's looking out for the buyers and sellers when it's our job to do so?
Yeah, totally.
There could only be so much, the board, the state can only do so much, right? It's on us to make sure that we're providing the best products for the consumer, and then it all unfolds from there.
Well, and then
This is coughing session.
the moral to this whole episode is treat others like you would want to be treated yourself. I mean, that
The
goes
golden rule.
in life, and it also goes with how you treat other agents. That if you treat, like I've always said, that life's like a mirror, right? It's going to treat you the way that you treat other people, and it all comes back. So, like we had all mentioned, I mean, you need to represent your client, but you also want to have good relationships with the other agents as well.
Hit the nail on the head right there.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace.